Final battleground shifts. With the 2024 election around the corner, polling data from 7 key states reveals unexpected contenders and unprecedented support swings. Analysts are scrambling to understand these late-game surges in what could be one of the tightest races in history. Will these last-minute shifts decide the election? Find out where the votes are leaning and how one surprising trend could tip the scales before we begin. Make sure to like and subscribe. It's free. Now let's get into it. There's a major shift underway. Republicans are seeing unprecedented early voting turnout, both in person and by mail, with nearly 60 million ballots already cast, representing over a third of the anticipated total. Although Democrats are beginning to close the gap, it's uncertain if this is cause for concern for the Harris campaign. At this point, registered Democrats have submitted 41% of the ballots, Republicans 40%, and independents or third-party voters 19%, according to NBC News' early voting tracker. This suggests less polarization in early and mail-in voting compared to 2020, as Republicans, along with Trump, are actively promoting early voting, a significant change from the last election. Frequent voters, those who consistently participate in elections, are leaning more Republican this time around, which could lead to a larger Republican turnout by Election Day. Even if Trump loses a few points among independent voters, he could still be competitive for the 270 electoral votes needed, as well as in the national popular vote. Given this, examining the Electoral College map along with polling, demographic trends, and early voting data offers a clearer view of the current state of the race. Republicans are expected to win comfortably in states like Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, and Alaska for Trump. Strong Republican support is also seen in North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska's 1st and 3rd districts, Kansas, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Kentucky, Indiana, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, and South Carolina, where early voting results show leads of 15 to 40 points. Together, these states would provide Republicans with 125 electoral votes. Meanwhile, Harris is leading in solid Democratic states along the Pacific Coast, California, Hawaii, Oregon, and Washington, as well as in Colorado and Illinois. In the Northeast, Democratic strongholds include New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and Washington, D.C., all states that have been solidly blue for decades. Biden won these states by at least 15 points in 2020, and early voting counts show Democrats with substantial leads. Collectively, these states give Harris 190 electoral votes, with 17 states still up for grabs. Neither candidate is poised to secure a majority across most remaining states. Trump is expected to maintain his hold on Ohio and Iowa, states he previously won by 8 points in both 2020 and 2016. He's also likely to retain Maine's 2nd congressional district, one of the most rural, oldest, and predominantly white districts in the country, which could shift further right this time. Meanwhile, Harris is expected to win New Mexico, which leaned Democratic by 11 points for Biden, making it a more reliably blue state than nearby Colorado, which leans slightly further left. In recent elections, trends indicate that the Hispanic vote has been shifting slightly towards Republicans, although New Mexico is anticipated to remain solidly in the Democratic camp. This state has historically leaned Democratic, and various cultural and demographic factors suggest it will likely continue to do so in the upcoming election. Meanwhile, in Maine, Vice President Kamala Harris is positioned to perform well, particularly in the 1st congressional district. In 2020, President Biden secured a statewide victory by a margin of 9 points, and many analysts believe that Harris could replicate or even improve upon this performance, reflecting the district's progressive leanings and strong Democratic base. As the election landscape evolves, attention now turns to 12 battleground states that hold a combined 191 electoral votes. A critical focus is on Nevada, where early voting has become a focal point of the election. Republicans currently lead Democrats by 4 points in the returned ballots, with 39% of the total compared to 30% for Democrats. So far, around 850,000 ballots have been cast, which accounts for approximately 60% of Nevada's total turnout in 2020. This early Republican advantage is a significant cause for concern for the Harris campaign, especially considering that Biden won Nevada by a narrow margin of just 2.4% in the last election. Notably, in 2020, Democrats had an early voting lead of 4 points, reflecting a more favorable trend for them at that time. However, Nevada has gradually leaned more Republican in subsequent elections, raising alarms about the Democrats' ability to maintain their foothold in the state. The shift in early voting dynamics underscores the importance of mobilizing support and effectively addressing the concerns of voters as the election draws closer. Current polling indicates that Vice President Kamala Harris has a narrow lead of just 1% over former President Donald Trump in Nevada, a state that has become a focal point for both campaigns as the election approaches. The Democrats face an urgent challenge. They must work to diminish the Republican advantage in early voting within the coming week. If they fail to do so, Trump could surpass expectations not only in Nevada, but also in other pivotal states across the country. Arizona is another key battleground that merits close attention. In this southwestern state, Trump currently enjoys a slight edge, making it a critical area for both parties. The 2020 election saw Biden win Arizona by a razor-thin margin of just 0.3%, underscoring the highly competitive nature of this race. Given its demographics and political landscape, Arizona is poised to be a tight contest once again. Both Nevada and Arizona reflect broader national trends where early voting dynamics could play a decisive role in determining the outcome. For Democrats, the priority must be to rally support among their base and counteract the Republican momentum in early ballots. If Trump maintains or extends his lead in these early returns, it could signal a shift in voter sentiment, potentially affecting not just these two states, but the overall landscape of the election. As the days progress, both campaigns will be ramping up their efforts in these battlegrounds, mobilizing voters and crafting targeted messages to secure every possible vote. The stakes are high, and with both states leaning slightly Republican at the moment, the upcoming week will be critical for the Democrats to solidify their positions and maintain their electoral viability. Maricopa County has experienced rapid growth and significant demographic changes in recent years, which were instrumental in President Biden's narrow victory in Arizona during the 2020 election. The surge in the number of Hispanic voters and college-educated individuals contributed to a high turnout in these key demographics, ultimately turning the county and the state toward the Democrats. However, the current early voting landscape paints a more challenging picture for the Democrats. With 1.7 million early and mail-in ballots already submitted, Republicans currently hold an 8-point lead over Democrats, with 42% of the votes compared to 34% for the Democrats. This marks a 2-point increase in the Republican advantage since the last update, highlighting a shift in support that could pose a significant challenge for the Harris campaign. In the 2020 election cycle, Republicans had led Democrats by only 3 points in early voting, indicating a notable change in voter dynamics that favors the GOP this time around. Given Biden's slim 0.3% victory margin in Arizona in 2020, any shortfall in Democratic turnout or support could have serious implications for the upcoming election. Current polling reflects that Trump is ahead of Harris by an average of 2.2% according to the 538 aggregation, emphasizing that Arizona remains a crucial battleground where Trump consistently leads or is neck and neck with Harris. This trend is particularly concerning for Democrats, as it indicates potential vulnerabilities in a state they previously managed to flip. The outlook for Arizona is further underscored by prediction markets, which currently give Trump approximately a 75% chance of winning the state. This favorable odds scenario mirrors similar trends observed in Nevada, where Trump also appears to be gaining traction. As both campaigns intensify their efforts in these battleground states, the Democrats face an uphill battle to not only maintain their ground, but to reclaim the support of key voter groups that propelled them to victory just a few years ago. The situation in Maricopa County serves as a microcosm of the broader challenges facing the Democrats as they strive to navigate a shifting electoral landscape. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to click like and subscribe for more similar content. In Texas, a crucial state with 40 electoral votes at stake, early voting has reached an impressive total of over 7 million ballots cast, making it the highest early voting turnout in the nation so far. While Republicans continue to lead in overall turnout, their advantage has narrowed to 14 points, with 51% of registered Republicans voting early compared to 37% of Democrats. This shift in margin is noteworthy, especially in light of the 2020 election, where Trump secured Texas by a relatively narrow margin of just 5.6%, marking the closest GOP victory in the state in recent years. Current polling shows Harris trailing Trump by more than 7 points in Texas. However, it's important to note that Democrats appear to be performing slightly better at this stage compared to the same time in the 2020 election cycle. Despite this improvement, the increasing Republican support among Hispanic voters presents a significant challenge for Democrats. This demographic shift may hinder the party's ability to surpass their 2020 turnout numbers, ultimately placing Texas in the lean Republican category as the election approaches. Florida is exhibiting similar trends, showcasing substantial Republican momentum. With over 6 million early ballots already cast, Republicans hold a 10-point lead over Democrats, with 44% of the early votes compared to 34% for Democrats. This is a stark contrast to the 2020 election, where Democrats led early voting by 1 point. Despite this, Trump managed to win Florida by 3.5%. Since then, there has been a notable surge in Republican voter registration, while the Florida Democratic Party has struggled to keep pace, indicating a rightward shift in the state's political landscape. This Republican trend became especially evident in the 2022 elections, with Senator Marco Rubio and Governor Ron DeSantis winning re-election in landslide fashion. Current polls suggest that Trump could potentially win Florida in 2024 by the widest margin in decades, reinforcing the state's classification in our lean Republican category. As both Texas and Florida demonstrate growing Republican advantages in early voting and voter registration, the implications for the Democratic Party are significant. Both states, which have been critical to Democratic strategies in past elections, are now facing challenges that could alter the electoral map in the upcoming race. The ability of the Democrats to mobilize their base and counteract the shifting voter demographics will be essential as they strive to remain competitive in these key battlegrounds. In Georgia, where President Biden secured a narrow victory by only 0.2% in 2020, the pivotal role of high voter turnout, particularly among black voters, enabled Democrats to break the GOP's 30-year winning streak in the state. However, recent polls indicate a troubling trend, increasing support for Trump among black and Hispanic voters. This shift raises significant concerns for Democrats, who rely heavily on strong turnout and support from black voters. According to recent polling data, Trump has reportedly gained more than 20 points among black voters compared to 2020, a development that could undermine Democratic efforts to maintain their foothold in Georgia. Currently, early voting in Georgia has reached record levels, with Republicans holding a slight 3-point lead over Democrats, garnering 48% of the early vote compared to 45% for Democrats. In the 2020 election cycle, Republicans led early voting by 8 points, so while the gap has narrowed, Georgia is shaping up to be a challenging battleground for the Harris campaign. The high volume of mail-in ballots, which typically skew Democratic, has influenced early voting results, but the overall landscape indicates that Georgia remains marked as tilt Republican on the election map. This designation reflects the possibility of change as more votes are cast and counted. For Democrats to remain competitive in this landscape, a strong early voting advantage in North Carolina is essential. The dynamics in North Carolina are particularly concerning, as rural areas, strongholds for Trump, are expected to see significant turnout on Election Day. Currently, Republicans hold a narrow lead of 1 point among the 3.3 million ballots cast thus far in North Carolina, positioning the state as another key battleground where Democrats are falling short of their 2020 early voting performance. In the previous election, Democrats maintained a 5-point lead before Election Day, having cast 4.5 million ballots. Despite this early advantage, Trump ultimately secured a narrow win. As it stands, Trump leads Harris by 1.1% in North Carolina, further solidifying the state's classification as a lean Republican territory on the electoral map. This places Trump at a total of 268 electoral votes, just shy of the necessary 270 for victory. The dynamics in both Georgia and North Carolina underscore the importance of voter mobilization and turnout strategies for Democrats as they navigate a challenging electoral landscape. The shifting support among key demographic groups and the implications of early voting trends will be critical factors in determining the outcomes in these pivotal battlegrounds as the election approaches. As we shift our focus to the Midwest, Minnesota, the home state of Harris's running mate, Tim Walz, presents a promising picture for Democrats. In the 2020 election, they secured a solid 13-point lead in early voting, with Biden winning the state by a 7-point margin. This year, Democrats are leading by an impressive 23 points in early voting, having cast nearly 1 million ballots. However, it's worth noting that this lead has slightly diminished as in-person early votes begin to replace mail-in ballots. Overall, Minnesota remains firmly categorized as lean Democratic on the electoral map, indicating a strong likelihood of continued support for the party in the upcoming election. Now, our attention turns to the pivotal Rust Belt states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Historically, these states have been a reliable bloc for Democrats since 1988, but they narrowly shifted to Trump in 2016 before returning to Biden in 2020. As we approach the 2024 election, securing victory in one of these states could prove crucial for either candidate in their quest for the 270 electoral votes needed to win. For Harris, winning all 3 states may be necessary to secure her path to victory. However, capturing Wisconsin alone could also ensure her win, even if Trump manages to claim all 4 battleground states in the Sun Belt. Wisconsin, in particular, presents unique challenges for Democrats. The state has a higher rural population and a consistent right-leaning trend, making it particularly receptive to Trump's appeal to white working-class voters. This demographic has been pivotal in shaping the political landscape of Wisconsin, and their support could be a decisive factor in the upcoming election. As Election Day approaches, the race in these states remains exceptionally close, promising an intense finish. Each campaign is ramping up its efforts to engage voters and solidify support in these critical battlegrounds. The outcome in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania could very well determine the fate of the 2024 presidential race, with both candidates keenly aware that victory in these states may be the key to unlocking the necessary electoral votes for a win. With the stakes higher than ever, both parties are strategizing intensely, making every vote count as they head into the final stretch of the campaign. As we monitor the developments in these states, it's clear that the race is shaping up to be one of the most competitive and closely watched elections in recent history. If you've made it this far and enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell to stay updated on future videos on YouTube. Additionally, if you have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments.